Hello and welcome to Energy Freedom, the talk show on the platform of Energy Club. And today we are holding a decisive discussion on the future of the Ukrainian energy regulator. The topic is institutional independence of the National Energy and Resources, National and Utilities Regulation Commission in 2026, Euro integration test, legislative changes, and investor trust. This meeting is not an isolated event. It is a continuation of the systematic work organized by the Energy Club regarding the reform of the regulator. As a leading business association, the Energy Club understands that without a predictable umpire, there is no game, and there is no investment, of course. Why are we meeting today? The matter is that on January the 12th, the Energy Club published an analysis of official correspondence between international institutions and the Ukrainian authorities regarding draft laws number 14282 and number 14222-1. We have seen the letters from Ambassador Katarina Maternova, EU Delegation, and Director Artur Lorkovsky, Energy Community Secretariat. The message is clear. The European Union is watching closely. The energy community is waiting for an official request to assess the laws. Today, we must define the red lines. Does the proposed legislation bring us closer to the EU, or does it risk pausing our accession negotiations? Allow me to introduce our distinguished speakers. They are Andrei Yuris, the head of the Energy Community Secretariat ECRB unit, Aaron Kerpel-Fronius, Policy Officer on Energy, Delegation of the European Union to Ukraine, and Jan Heitzman, Managing Partner in Correggio Consulting BV. We may be joined by Yuri Vlasenko, who is, of course, the head of the Ukrainian National Energy and Utilities Regulation Committee. But since the situation is volatile, I suggest that we start without Mr. Vlasenko because, as I have already noted, we have distinguished speakers with us, and I have no doubt that they have a lot to do even right after our talk. So I will first ask Mr. Kerpel-Fronius. Let's start with a letter from Ambassador Maternova of the 18th of December, which the Energy Club analyzed. The letter states that a well-resourced, autonomous, and impartial regulator is a condition for investors' trust. So, looking at the current legislative initiatives, the draft laws, both of them, 14282 and 14282-1, do you see an attempt to strengthen this autonomy, or are there hidden risks of political subordination?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the question, Andrei. And if you allow me, I would just take one step back and also provide some context and also some caveats, because what I want to highlight here, and it will become probably apparent during the conversation, is that with Andrei Juric, we are working extremely closely with the Energy Community Secretariat on this legislative file on the independence of NEURC, which is indeed a priority for the EU, and so we are very closely aligned in our assessment, our opinions, etc. And what I wanted to mention is that we are, of course, I am working in the EU delegation, and this is one of the priorities in Chapter 15 of the Energy chapter. In our enlargement report, we have highlighted the need to strengthen the independence of the regulator, and also it is an important milestone in our Ukraine plan, which is associated with quarterly payments through the Ukraine facility to the budget. So really strengthening the independence of the regulator is a priority for us in all of these work streams, and it's a priority under the energy chapter because it's such an important pillar of how the energy market functions. So this I just wanted to make as an introduction, and in this regard, I will perhaps let Andrei comment in detail because the Energy Community Secretariat has received one of the versions of the draft law for consultation, and they have provided detailed analysis. From our side, as a general message, we can say that there are positive directions in the draft law. There will be still needs for improvement and taking on board the suggestions of the secretariat or the comments of the secretariat. But we have on various work streams good working relationship with the Rada Energy Group and also with the incoming in the changes in the Ministry of Energy. It is very clear that for them as well this is a priority. So I'm very much hoping that we can finalize this key law as quickly as possible because it would also send an important message to donors that trust can be reestablished in the energy sector following the unfortunate events towards the end of last year. So perhaps this is as a start.
Yeah, Aaron, the point is clearly made and well taken, but before we come to the messages to investors, I want you to indicate a message to the Ukrainian side, and this is about negotiations on Chapter 15 energy, which are approaching. If Ukraine passes a law that weakens the regulator, could this technically pause the negotiation process? And what is the absolute red line for the EU here?
So on this level, I would not like to pass any sort of definite messages. For us, the aim is to strengthen the independence of the regulator, and it is very clearly a priority recommendation on our enlargement report. We have a constructive work together with the Ukrainian side, and I do not currently see a scenario in which a law would pass that would weaken the independence of the regulator. So currently we are discussing how we can further improve the already existing draft. We had our screening meeting on the energy chapter last year. Ukraine is preparing the negotiating position. We will take further steps on a technical level, cooperating well. So I would like to strike a positive tone and just say that this a good law on the energy regulator would certainly contribute to smoother negotiations under this chapter.
Well, you would like to strike a positive tone, and I think that you manage, at least for the time being. And now we come to Andrei Yuris, who, as you may remember, is the head of the Energy Community Secretariat, ECRB unit. And the question to you, Andrei, is has the situation changed compared to the Secretariat's letter from the 12th of December, which mentioned that you had not officially assessed the draft law 14282 because there was no formal request from the Ukrainian side? Have you received the draft for the assessment, and maybe you have assessed it already?
Thank you very much for the question, Andrei, and also for the invitation to this discussion. Really, I think appreciate this format and especially the topic. I think it's very, very important to kind of discuss it and to highlight and make it as much as transparent. What are the topics? What are the issues? And especially what is the kind of next step and direction? And before I go in detail answering your question, let me highlight also that, as Aaron said, that we have a very good cooperation with the Ukrainian authorities, NEURC, Ministry of Energy, as well as the Utilities Committee of the Verkhovna Rada. Really appreciate the very constructive, sometimes not easy, but very constructive discussions on various topics, also related to NEURC, and also transposition of the electricity integration package, and as well as to our partners, especially EU Delegation and the European Commission. So going back to your question, yes, we have been approached in the meantime from the letter which you mentioned. I think it was about the middle of December. So since then, we were approached by the committee of the Verkhovna Rada to assess the draft amendments to the NEURC law registered under the number 14282. And we have provided our comments, our assessments, our recommendations, I think about a week ago, by communication to the committee. This is something which is kind of consistent with how Secretariat, Energy Community Secretariat works. In these cases, that we are assessing and providing our comments and our recommendations to draft laws based on the approach or based on the communication requests of the Ukrainian authorities, be it the Ministry of Energy when they drafted a number of amendments. I was just looking as a preparation for this discussion. I think there were about 7 or 8 versions during the last year of this legislation during the last year, where we provided the assessment. And also in the last, I would say, 2 months, there was a number of communication from our side on these topics.
Were those communications initiated by you, or were they in response to the Ukrainian request?
Yeah, our assessment, as I mentioned, is based on the request from the relevant Ukrainian authorities. Of course, whenever we are monitoring the developments and situations, so whenever some new updates come up, of course, we look at it, we analyze it, we monitor it. But in order to communicate formally and officially our assessments, our opinion, our recommendation, this is based on also on the formal request from relevant Ukrainian authorities.
Understood. From the ECRB perspective, what is the biggest flaw in the current selection procedure for National Commission members? Is it the composition of the selection commission where we have political quotas, or is it the dismissal procedure? These 2 points are most often distinguished by Ukrainian analysts.
Yeah, and I understand these topics, aspects related to the selection process, as well as to kind of conditions for dismissal now are kind of very intensively debated and discussed in Ukraine. Yeah, we understand that. I think reflecting our position, and I would like to highlight, I'm talking about the Energy Community Secretariat's position. ECRB is a separate institution. It's an institution representing the regulators of the energy community contracting parties, but now I'm speaking on behalf of the Secretariat. So we made a number of recommendations on the selection process based on our observation of the selection process over the last couple of years, and especially the last one, which took place last year, where but I would kind of frame them as kind of suggestions and recommendations to enhance the transparency of this process, integrity of this process. And also we see some room for further elimination of potential conflict of interest. So we made recommendations about, for example, to make sure that members of the selection committee are not representing any entity, whether it's a public entity or a commercial entity, that is somehow affected by NEURC powers, by NEURC regulation. That's one aspect. Another aspect, what we saw as a room for improvement would be kind of standardization of the interviews. to have a standardized set of questions which would be posed to the candidates. And of course, there could be a follow-up questions on that, but at least all candidates would have kind of a common ground for kind of presenting and for the selection committee to assess their capabilities, their integrity, their personal and as well as professional qualities. So these are, for example, our recommendations.
Meanwhile, I have a follow-up question to you. Draft Law 14212-1 proposes changes to the rotation of members of the National Commission. Does this align with European acquis, or does it look like a mechanism to reset the regulator for political reasons whenever the need or the desire arises?
The draft law registered under 14282-1, we have not formally assessed. Of course, we look at it and we kind of analyzed it. But I'm not in the position now to present any official communication or position of the Secretary on that, because on this particular legislation draft, we have not been asked to assess. We are ready, of course, and we'll be glad to do so. But as I mentioned, based on the request from relevant authority of Ukraine. But I would like to kind of frame, this is an important topic, of course. Who is a member of the selection committee? How are these people selected? What are the criteria? We made a number of recommendations, both to the law 14282, and as well as the kind of earlier draft coming from the Ministry of Energy. And I think we made a summary in October last year where when we kind of summarized all our recommendations to NEURC law amendments. And we really strongly recommend to Ukrainian authorities to look at these recommendations and integrating them. I mean, we are not in a position to say this draft law or that draft law is good, better. It's important to kind of look at the result and kind of integrate and reflect these aspects in the final product.
Thank you very much. And we have Aaron back on the screen, and I hope that he will take part in the final discussion in the summing up of our talk today. But let's, after legislative changes or proposed legislative changes, turn to investor trust. And who is in a better position to speak about this than Jan Heitzman of Correggio Consulting BV? You work with international traders and investors. We talk a lot about euro integration. Let's talk about money. When a foreign investor reads that the Ukrainian parliament is proposing to change the regulator's selection procedure again, what is the signal? Does this create regulatory risk that increases the cost of capital for Ukraine?
I would put it very simple. Investors like transparency. Investors will invest in countries where there is a transparent decision-making on what businesses is allowed in the respective country. Investors will be more difficult in making decisions on investment in countries where there is intransparency on decision-making, where there is intransparency on the rule set and how actually rules are enforced. So insofar, investors look into sort of making their investments more secure in environments which they understand. And I think this is the chance for Ukraine. In the EU, we have a very transparent energy system, independence of regulators, not only in energy, but also, let's say, in competition, have been key in bringing about investment into Europe's infrastructure. Europe needs hundreds of billions of euros to basically adapt its infrastructure to the change generation portfolio that is being built to get more independent from fossil fuels. These investments only happen if people that put out their money for projects know exactly what the situation is, what the rule sets is, who is actually enforcing these rules. And part of that picture is also an independent regulator that has credibility to take its role up and not be dependent on governmental or political pressures. So I think this whole story about creating an independent regulator is actually something we have seen before in Europe, and I think we have solved it. We have really strong regulators now that have give the rules a meaning and enforce them, and this is good for investment. So this attracts investment. I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, you have, and in a heartening way, I must admit. But let's come back to Ukraine from European countries where there are strong regulators and independent regulators. We are moving towards market coupling. Can European traders trust a market where the regulators' decisions might be cancelled or heavily influenced by a phone call from the government?
I think the government should stay out of the technical development of market processes. Market coupling is a technical process that enables the exchange of power that Ukraine urgently needs. If it is clear, of course, that currently martial law applies in Ukraine, and Ukraine is in a particular situation when it comes to political issues that overlay technical processes. But in general, the market coupling is something that is technical in nature and should not work any different in Ukraine than it works in any other country.
Thank you. And since we are talking about money, what is the best practice in the EU regarding the financial independence of the regulator? Should it be financed by market fees, like, for instance, in Austrian e-control model, or from the state budget?
In the European Union, there is not a uniform practice when it comes to the financing of a regulatory agency. As you said yourself, there are various options that countries have chosen to finance the operation of such regulator. I think the market does not object to contribute to the functioning of a regulatory authority whose function it is to protect the integrity of the market. So I think market participants will be willing to contribute to the cost that it takes to supervise the proper market functioning. And I think insofar the e-control model, also the model that has been used in, for example, Hungary, works. And it obviously is maybe interesting for Ukraine because the state coffers are anyway, let's say, strained due to the situation. So I think a country such as Germany, which doesn't have the same situation, or the Netherlands the same, where the regulators receive allocations from the state budget, they are simply possible because the state coffers are still relatively full. So ultimately, there is no need for market-based contributions that would be paid by the market participants. But as said earlier, I think there is maybe for Ukraine, and looking at the public finance situation of Ukraine in particular, there is maybe an argument to let market participants contribute to the cost of a proper regulator that can then ensure a stable and transparent wholesale market.
Speaking of different experiences and different models in different countries, in European countries, I have a question to every one of the participants on the Selection Commission. Currently, the Selection Commission for National Energy and Utilities Regulatory Commission members is heavily influenced by political appointees from the President, from the Rada Parliament, from the Cabinet, and no one in this discussion has said that this is not so. Should Ukraine move to a model where international experts have a decisive vote, like in the selection of anti-corruption bodies, or is energy a matter of sovereignty where foreigners should not vote? And Let's start from Andrei Yuris' opinion.
Great question, and I will reflect on our recommendation in this regard. Well, and as Jan mentioned about the financing, there are different models in the EU. There are also many different models in the EU, and also if you look broader into the world, how the commission members are selected. Sometimes there is a selection committee, sometimes there is a ministry, and so on and so on. What is really important that there is a transparent process, with a clear criteria, and the process has integrity. So all the relevant market participants, as well as the policymakers and the stakeholders, they have certain trust. Of course, there are people have different opinions, but in general, and especially over the years, there is some kind of a trust in the process. And so there is no like one size fits all. What we see and what we recommended in Ukraine, that it's not really an issue of who exactly appoints, which institution appoints representatives into the selection committee. There are at the moment appointees from various ministries as well as from the Verkhovna Rada. We made a suggestion, given the situation in Ukraine and given the need to kind of create and increase the trust of the process, we made recommendations that representatives of international organizations are members of this. So representatives of the European Commission, Energy Community Secretariat, and maybe one more, which would be selected from the key international institution. And again, this is not something to work against any interest of Ukraine or Ukrainian people or Ukrainian energy sector. It's really as kind of a measure, I would say even temporary measure, to kind of build up the trust in the process, to establish the relevant or improve the relevant procedures, transparency, and ideally, after some time, there is no need to have an international representative there. But this is something which we believe, or that's the reason we propose it, that this could be a measure which could kind of improve and increase the integrity of the whole process.
Yeah, I for one would not mind if experts like you and all our discussants today take part in deciding important matters in Ukraine. One of the reasons being that you are as removed from political pressure in Ukraine as possible. But let's hear Jan Heisman. What's your opinion on this?
These are questions that come up regularly. I think the main thing when selecting a candidate is the know-how he has about markets functioning. I don't personally think that know-how is automatically linked to a nationality. I think if someone knows how market works, how market rules can be enforced, how market can be surveyed, because that's what you need. You need to have some sort of market surveillance. It's only that through REMIT we have succeeded in Europe to do it. Before that, when I entered the European energy market in 1999, it was a black box. And obviously there were abuses of this within that black box. So that's why Europe embarked on this whole transparency regime that has been very successful and is working well. But on the selection of people that supervise it, that give the wider direction, I think the only element should be the competence of the person concerned, less the nationality.
Thank you very much. And we come to Aaron Kerpel-Fronius. What is your summing up on this question?
Yes, thank you. And as I made the caveat earlier, we are on many things very closely aligned with Andrei and the Secretariat. So I risk a bit of duplication, but we have actually observed the selection process of three commissioners last summer with the Secretariat. And And some of these recommendations were coming already following this experience. Not only it doesn't only relate to the composition of the competition commission, but also, as Andrei mentioned earlier, standardized testing, more transparent scoring mechanisms, etc. So there are a number of improvements. But since the Midas scandal, I think that this has even more of an increased importance to restore donor trust, and we fully support the recommendations of the Secretariat to have members, independently designated members of the Competition Commission, perhaps for a temporary measure, who would have a voting right and play a part in selecting the commissioners of the regulator. I completely agree with Jan that, of course, during the selection process, it's only about the skills and the know-how, and it's in everyone's best interest to have very experienced, independent, and professional members, commissioners, and the regulator.
Well, from my point of view, what you said was not a duplication, but rather a continuation of what was said previously. And to avoid any risk of duplication, I will now pose a very open question, which will sum up our discussion. Imagine that we started when there was a high risk of outage, and the power outage did happen, and you had only 30 seconds to say something very, very important. Now, after the discussion, we give everyone 30 seconds to say maybe that very important thing that you would say when the power outage happens, or maybe something that you somehow omitted in your discussion today. And this time it's Jan Heitzman who starts.
You're taking me first. That's nice. Of course, power outages is not something, again, that is only, let's say, in Ukraine. Power outages also happen elsewhere. We had a major power outage in Spain last year that lasted for almost a day and left millions of people without power in 3 countries. So obviously in Ukraine, there is different reasons for the power outages that you have through enemy action, which gives it a different context. But in reality, what we need a control on the monopolies that exist in Europe. The monopolies are the grid monopolies. We need to make sure, in order to build a market in the future, that anyone that generates power and puts this on the grid gets equal access to that grid, has equal transportation and usage rights to this grid, and this needs to be at equal cost. So a level playing field must be there on these regulated monopolies, and this is the role of an independent regulator. And this is exactly also the reason why that regulator needs to be independent. It cannot just be a state recipient that receives guidance from some government member. It needs to be a person that is competent, understands the market, and is independent in his judgment, because only this enables him to take the right decisions in the function that he's meant to fulfill. And this answers ultimately the questions around outages. May there be whatever their cause may be, but ultimately you need, in a certain way, technocrats that are doing this because it's non-political business, and it enables the best administration, or let's say the best use of the existing infrastructure for the market purposes. That would be my answer in a summary.
And that was your answer. Not only would be, but that was your answer. Let's hear from Aaron Karpelfronius.
Yes, I would perhaps reiterate even stronger how important this reform is. A strong independent regulator really underpins everything that we do in the energy sector. And given the scale of the damages, of course, donor assistance is vital and it will continue. The EU stands with Ukraine. I would also like to emphasize this, but we will need private investors who can trust the system and who are willing to put their money here. And without strengthening the independence of the regulator, this will be a challenge. So I would just like to reiterate how important this is also for the energy security of Ukraine in general.
Thank you very much. And now Andrei Yuris has the task to avoid duplication of what Aaron Karpelfronius said.
And also what Jan said. And I love the challenge. Thank you for that. I like very much, Andrei, your in your intro speech, you kind of compare the regulator to the empire, kind of a referee. And I think this is what it is, that if you play soccer, you really want to have a referee who is independent, who follows the rule and who enforces the rules in the same way towards anyone. And if there are some interferences from outside, which kind of discriminates against some team or player, no one likes it. The whole game suffers, people suffer, and so on and so on. And this is a very good kind of parallel to the regulation of the energy sector. You want to have really professional, competent, and independent regulator because all these good reasons which Aaron and Jan already mentioned. And this is, I would like to highlight, although I'm proud representative of the international organization, Energy Community Secretariat. I think it's not only for the donors and not only for the international community and accession, it's very much equally important, if not even more important, for Ukraine itself, to have a really strong and independent regulator and good rules. You have world-class companies, and I wish and I hope that all this crazy war and the Russian aggression will stop soon. And with a good regulation, you can really, really rebuild your energy system and even bring the lessons to the rest of the world and provide the lesson to the rest of the world, like, for example, how to build resilient grids. So this is something which, without good regulation, it will be very difficult. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. But if you thought that my questions were exhausted with the previous one, then you were mistaken. I have two brief questions, and they stem mostly from what Andrei Yuris said. He listed some requirements that Ukrainians and people in Europe, of course, have to the Ukrainian regulator. And I remember that one of the demands that many people in Ukraine say have, and this does not only concern only the National Commission, but the system of state bodies in entirety, is the salaries in these bodies. For instance, when the EU letter mentions a well-resourced regulator, does it mean that the salaries in this sector should go up so that maybe it removes the risk of corruption? Andrei?
Yes, this is another important topic, and it's kind of part of the financial independence of the regulator, kind of because we consistently communicate, and not only in Ukraine, in other contracting parties of the energy community. You really need to have, to the governments and to the countries, you really need to have well-resourced, well-financed the regulators so they can retain, keep, and also attract the talent, experts, really educated and experienced people so they can build up and develop good regulation. Without that, it's very, 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 very difficult, if not possible, if not impossible. So usually this kind of financial independence discussion kind of usually focuses on this kind of narrow topic about the salaries. The salaries should be kind of, in our view, kind of comparable to the market, because if not, then the experts will just leave the regulator and will go to work for the energy company or for some consultant or somewhere else, and it will really kind of damage or limit the capabilities of the regulators. We are not, as a secretariat, we are not telling anyone how exactly the salary should be determined. This is not our position and even our role. This is really for the relevant authorities within each country, Ukraine to say, but kind of these kind of principles are very, very important to take into account and then make the proper determination.
Thank you. If Aaron or Jan want to add something or to put another angle on this answer, you're welcome.
Well, if you get if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. That's what I think is true, and this is what Andrei meant. You need experienced people. These experienced people, they come at a certain price, but it makes them more resilient, I think, if they are properly remunerated. But that should be, let's say, the end of the comment, because ultimately, is Ukraine as a state, is an independent state that should also foresee for these type of payments to be made to people that are important for them. And therefore, I mean, I think it should be a proper remuneration that would, let's say, appreciate the qualification of the people appointed.
Thank you. Aaron?
Nothing to add, fully agree.
All right. And now about soccer. Although, of course, we're speaking in this season when hockey is more natural. In soccer, you can strike a goal with your leg, with your head, or as one very famous striker did, with the hand of God. What is the decisive factor in Ukraine's reform? Is it the ability to go on and on with your legs? Is it the ability to use your head? Or we need a hand of God to help us? And this time it's Aaron who starts to answer.
Yes, brilliant question. And I would also like to highlight the great header scored by the Ukrainian goalkeeper yesterday against Real Madrid, while we are on the topic. From my side, I would just like to say, perhaps this doesn't strictly relate to the topic, but in general, we see some positive signals in energy sector governance reset on state-owned enterprises, sort of charter revision supervisory board. Time will tell, but I think that there is impetus and there's political will to improve a lot of the because it's of course a complicated puzzle. The regulator doesn't work in isolation. Our Ukraine plan and the reforms, they create milestones, very a piecemeal approach, and certainly this helps for the legs to go on, because you can always see the next milestone coming up, and it gives you a reform agenda. But of course, this is also defined with Ukrainian authorities and constantly discussed, so brings the head into it. We have clearly communicated our reform priorities. We have very good cooperation with our counterparts. So I think the hand of God is not needed. It will be more of a continuous effort and continuous dialogue between the parties.
Thank you very much. Andrei?
Yeah, I think let's use all the tools and all the body parts in this senior parallel which are available and which are according to the rules. I think this is the most important thing. And you know, if we look at the hand of God, you know, back, and with the current technologies and kind of referee technologies available, the hand of God is really obvious what it really is. So I would not really suggest to kind of rely on any tool of this kind.
Thank you. Jan?
Whilst we all should trust on God's guidance, I think what is needed is a brain that makes sure that leg touches the ball at the right point in time and doesn't put it in its own goal, but in the goal of the opposite party. So that's my addition to it.
Thank you very, very much. As a former ardent soccer fan, I'm absolutely delighted to meet people who know about soccer and how it should be played. And of course, let's not forget that the arbiter or umpire can add some time to the designated 90 minutes. Does Ukraine have additional time? I don't think so. We should play and win, or we should not play. We should work and win within the limited time that is accorded us. And I'm deeply grateful to my today's interlocutors for the fact that they apply every effort to assist us in this goal. Thank you very much, and I hope that we'll meet again on the platform of the Energy Club. And by the way, we undertake to show what you have said to Mr. Vlasenko of the National Commission, who for some reason of being very busy, I don't have any doubt that he is busy. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.